So from a global standpoint, we were up in ICAO recently.
Right.
And, you know, Steve is already getting out and doing his international trips. There's so much need around the world when it comes to what advanced ANSPs do and what they can provide to less advanced ANSPs. And because of that great needs, it's hard sometimes to prioritize what you're going to do. You know, across ABS, our Aviation Safety Organization, airports, ATO, certainly we've probably got the lion's share in those three organizations of commodities that ANSPs are seeking if they're trying to develop a part of their aviation ecosystem. So, you know, we're kind of putting that strategy together now, but I think the work that I've had the opportunity to participate on in CANSO it really dovetails nicely in with that. And certainly for folks that are familiar with CANSO, you know, close to home, the work we did around Cadena, which is it's a data sharing network that CANSO sponsors. And then the FAA, ATO, and Caribbean ANSPs, we kind of model a strategy that's much more similar to what we do on a daily basis out at our command center with the operators, just having daily calls and giving everybody situational awareness. So through Cadena in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, they're actually they're having those dialogues now, which has been really key when, especially during catastrophic events like hurricanes.
So to the other priority, the stakeholders and the people, I want to talk a little bit about hiring.
Okay.
Yeah, where are we at in the hiring?
Yeah, well, you know, everybody tends to focus on, so the ATO has 8 service units. We're about 32,000 people. And air traffic is one, tech ops is one. We've got 6 others too. They're not as large as the first 2, but they're certainly supporting in some form or fashion the delivery of air navigation services. From an air traffic hiring standpoint, we're doing good. We're on par. Back in 2013, during sequestration, we didn't hire anybody across the entire agency for 1 year, other than the airports organization,
right,
because they're funded through AIP.
Right.
So it's taken us years to catch up, but we have met and exceeded our air traffic controller hiring targets for the last 4 years. And we're sitting largely at our number, which is around 14,500 controllers. The administrator mentioned this morning, our big challenge right now is training. We have so many new people in the system.
Right.
That is our #1 priority from an air traffic standpoint, is train, train, train. And it was great to see at CFS this year, that was the theme of the conference that NACA put on, which is every day is a training day. So we've got a lot of work to do out there in our facilities, but it really is our #1 priority in the air traffic world. From a tech ops standpoint, we're hiring, we didn't do quite as well as where we wanted to be this year, but I think we'll make up for that next year. So really it's around training. We're bringing a lot of new folks in. On the air traffic side, we're pretty steady state now, and I think we're going to sit at about 1,000 new hires a year for hiring new, folks to come into the air traffic training program.
From the hirees that come in and go into the training program, what are you looking at? Because we hear everything, washout rates, things like that. How's the hiring equating to making it through the program, either through washing out, failing the training program, or just going somewhere else for another job? Because a lot of times, like you said, they're trying to train. You can't always get a lot of training.
Yeah.
You're sometimes in a line.
Yeah, I mean, the washout rate in the facilities, if you make it to a facility, tends to be fairly low. The washout rate at the academy is a little bit higher, but that's not a bad thing, right? If we're going to see someone wash out, we want to lose an individual not in the air traffic facility, but during the earliest stage of training. You know, the workforce we're bringing in now, especially on the controller side, is it's so very young. And you think about the games, the gamification that people do in their own homes. Those are the people that are controlling air traffic now. And you know, Pete and I were talking about the Apple Watch, and I don't have an Apple Watch, but I know a lot of people do. So we've actually, on the air traffic side, we've introduced iPads. Every new controller or trainee gets an iPad. We load everything on the iPad. They've got all their manuals, their maps. We've got games on there. We know that controllers are very competitive. So scores are posted. They're continually trying to beat each other. We've seen facilities like Washington Center, through the iPad program, actually train off the street in 26 months, fully certified controller.
Really?
So we're making gains. We're rolling the iPads out across all of our facilities. They're not all up and running yet to where they need to be, but it's all about training. And that training then solves a lot of the other challenges we've had in some places, like 6-day work weeks, overtime, all of that.
Right.
So the key is training.
Which goes to employee morale.
It goes to employee morale, sure. And so we're tracking that data. We track all training hours now. I review it. I see every facility's training by sector, by area. And our leadership team is very, very focused on that. So the data tells the story. So if we've got some facilities doing it much better than others, then we know where to go in and support to try to get them up to the same level.
You brought up NATCA's Communicating for Safety, CFS, and you also brought up ICAO.
Yep.
I heard you talk about the NOTAM system under CFS, and I know that was a subject of discussion up at ICAO during those 2 weeks.
Right.
Were you there the whole 2 weeks?
And no, I was the better part of the first week.
Okay. You want to tell us a little bit about that, because you feel that's one of the major...
I do. I'm pretty passionate about this one. So last summer, I had a large group of folks that had requested to come in and meet with me just about the NOTAM system and process in general. And so I had A4A came in, there were members of NBAA, we had AOPA was in there, and then some operators came in as well. I know that we had a couple airlines that actually came into the meeting. And they put together a pretty thoughtful overview of what it's like to have to utilize NOTAMs in the system today. When Mike Whitaker was the deputy administrator, he was always complaining about the NOTAM process.
Yeah.
And so if you're a pilot, you know that when you file a flight plan and you're retrieving your NOTAMs, depending on where you're going, it can be really, really long. So we had a really great conversation. I had committed I was going to take a deeper look. Well, we did. I had asked our safety organization to go deep, do a top-to-bottom review on the whole NOTAM system. And I just didn't like what I found. I thought we could do so much better. But it's a system and a processes that were created over decades. It didn't happen overnight. And so we sat down and we wanted to do something. I wanted to do something. So first thing I did was appointed someone to spearhead it from an agency standpoint. And so Abby Smith, now Steve McMahon, initially did it, and Steve left. But Abby kind of is the belly button. But on behalf of the entire agency, Abby is leading a cross-functional team working with industry. So we we pulled in the group that had come in initially and sat down and showed them what we had found. We were all in violent agreement. So we put together a program plan, and part of the review that the team came back to me with was they broke it down and they said, you know, we've got process issues, we have technology issues, we've got governance issues, and there were probably 4 or 5 key areas. So after really putting a plan together with those stakeholders that had initially come in, what what we agreed to do is that we are going to, I agree that we're going to align all of the governance for the NOTAM and aeronautical information into one office. So ATO owned a lot of it, and it was broken up in different parts of the organization. So for the governance piece, it'll be one-stop shopping. It's important that the governance sits together. And that governance office is going to comply with the ICAO rules for machine readable, sortable, filterable, all of that. So that's going to be a done deal. The other thing we needed to do was to fix our NOTAM system. And it was a system that had been put together over many, many years. And when the last system had rolled out a handful of years ago, we never shut off the old one. And so we had pieces of both. So we're going to realign it, and it'll be one system, and it's going to be a single gateway to enter the NOTAMs, to work in the NOTAM system, and to retrieve NOTAMs. And we think we can have that done by next summer. So we've got steps along the way. The team is working very, very hard. The last piece of the puzzle is the training and the outreach. So airports file a lot of NOTAMs. It's a free entry system, and it won't be after we get all of this put together. But to actually do it, we've got to do a lot of training. So we've got many organizations involved in this, including NASAO and others, to do all of the outreach. And I think we're going to be in a much, much better place.
So you'll have an NOTAM clearinghouse, basically?
Yeah.
The airport will put it in, and isn't the output going to be plain language?
It will be plain language.
Because who's seen a NOTAM before from a user point of view?
Yeah,
right.
It can be pretty overwhelming.
Very overwhelming.
And if you've got to search, 15 or 20 pages into a NOTAM to find a runway closure,
right,
that's a problem.
Yes.
So, DOD actually took the system we developed a few years ago. They use that system. Mm-hmm. And so we've done a lot of consulting with them as well. We know we can do it. I think we were probably part of the biggest obstacle here. So there's nothing easy about it, but we're going to get it done. And I think this will have a great impact on safety, especially for pilots who are flying through the system. The other thing is, in the last reauthorization, there is one of the do-outs that we own is around TFRs and NOTAMs. That's always been a sticky issue, and so we're gonna solve that piece of it, and we're gonna roll it into this NOTAM activity. So, working with stadiums, NFL, other organizations that publish these recurring NOTAMs that take the airspace away for probably more time than really needs to be.
Mm-hmm, right.
So we're working through our SysOps security with those stakeholders and coming up with a better way to more finitely identify what the true TFR times are that need to be published for those NOTAMs.
So the dynamic airspace of TFRs will be more efficiently used.
Yeah, and I think because it will be standard, it'll be an ICAO format, filterable. I think there will be opportunities for more third-party app developers to take that information and customize it for different flying communities out there.
Sounds like something that might interact with Lance very well as well in the long term.
Well, now that you brought up Lance, so...
Hey, how about Lance?
The one thing I'd say, I think everybody here is familiar with Lance. The end of this month marks the end of the beta test on Lance, and we are going to roll it into ops, and it's an operational system. Right. So I think, we kind of tested what we needed to out of that. We're going to be bringing in also 7 new companies that will be providing those services through Lance as well. So that's pretty exciting.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, more competition.
And of the NOTAM system, you said at CFS that you think it's the biggest safety initiative in 5 to 10 years.
I do. I think this is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And, I'm not a pilot, but if I was a pilot, I wouldn't want to have to go search through NOTAMs to find important safety information. So, and we've got a lot of permanent NOTAMs that have been out in the system for a long time. We're going through every one of those. And our goal is to get rid of the permanent NOTAMs and keep the NOTAMs in that really need to be in.
I've had to brief NOTAM, so yeah, I think this is fantastic.
Yeah.
So 2020 is coming up quickly, January, which is the ADSB mandate. Do you have any concerns regarding meeting the mandate?
Well, remember that earlier conversation, nothing ever goes as planned.
Right,
So,
yeah. Well, it doesn't. I mean,
it doesn't.
You always have a plan B.
Yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah.
No, overall, no. I think we're in a really good place.
Yeah.
So, from an ATO standpoint, there were two areas that we've worked pretty hard the last few months to get mitigations in place before January 1st. So one was around the privacy issue, and certainly we heard the voices loudly from the community around privacy. We've got an interim and a longer-term solution for that. The interim is actually more work for us, but we're going to roll into the longer term by the summertime. But we will be up. We'll have it on the web, what the process will be for requesting ICAO codes to utilize the privacy aspect of flying in the system. So I think we're going to be fine there. The other piece is we know that there will be times when people will want to access ruled airspace that may not be equipped. They will not be a priority for us in ruled airspace, but we're putting together a portal where a pilot could go in and request authorization and approval to fly in ruled airspace and not be equipped. But again, that is not the preference.
No, that's a change from everyone will be equipped.
Yeah, well it is, and in fact, but there are some pilots who, may have a need one time to go into ruled airspace. Right. And so we'll evaluate those, but what we're telling folks is, if you don't hear from us, you can assume that you were denied access. Because really the priority is to be equipped.
Of course.
And the equipage is looking really good. On the mainline carriers, we're up, I think, about 93%.
Well, I saw it at the NAC.
Yeah,
right.
And I think the regionals are sitting at about 88%. So we're looking good.
Okay, good. Speaking of the NAC, we've had a leadership change on the NAC. What do you see as a key focus in the coming months with NAC, do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think our focus will change? I'm on the NAC with you. Do you think our focus is going to change?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it might shift a little bit.
Right.
So we've had the existing 4+1 working groups that make up the NextGen Advisory Committee. We've got Surface and PBN and Datacom and multiple runway ops. We added Northeast Corridor 2 years ago.
2 years.
We're making, right, and we've been making good progress there. The agency just signed out a tasking for 2 additional taskings. One is on the minimum capability list, the MCL, and then the other one is around EATS, which was a reauthorization provision from last September, and that is enhanced air traffic services. So this is language that directs the agency to conduct a pilot program at 3 airports where we will favor operationally aircraft that are equipped with next generation capabilities in the aircraft. So we are working through the NAC. The tasking was just signed out this week, and we'll be working with the subcommittee. Craig Drew is the subcommittee chair from Southwest Airlines. He's doing a terrific job. Chip Childs is the new NAC chair, and Chip is from the regional community, the president and CEO of SkyWest Airlines. So we're working with those 2 gentlemen, but it'll be a 2-pronged tasking that they'll do the work in 2 phases, but they're going to set about doing that, and we'll see where those 3 locations are out there. I think, where we're evolving to, Steve had mentioned this morning that the large majority of the foundational programs are laid in now, and so much of the work that we're doing is really around the capabilities that sit on top of those systems that support trajectory-based operations. We have elements of TBO that operate in the NAS every single day. So I think as we move forward now, the work on the MCL, the minimum capability list, this tasking that industry will do is really about forward fit aircraft, but it's recommendations around the minimum capabilities for comm, nav, surveillance, and resiliency in aircraft for airlines. But if you think about what you need to fly some of the advanced procedures that we're rolling in, you're going to need advanced avionics. So I think it's all going to dovetail really, really nice. So, you know, a lot of the work we've done really has been very foundational. And so we're kind of getting to the meat.
Operationalized.
Yep.
Right, and we spoke a little bit with Steve about that this morning as well. That's the phase we're working into. 70% complete, now operationalized. Yeah. So do you have any major accomplishments you want to talk about at NextGen, recently announced modernization, that you'd like to highlight?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I think we are, you know, checking the box on several things out there that we can say we got it done.
Right.
And, you know, of note, to support the ADSB out mandate, we just rolled in the last week the last operational facilities ADSB surveillance feeds. So all of our terminal facilities now have ADSB in there. You know, we talked a little bit about Datacom this morning. I think, you know, to lay in the towers first, I think was a really good way to go to gain traction for Datacom. And Craig Drew, on behalf of the industry, is really working hard with the industry to try to come to some consensus solutions on the industry side around helping with some of those challenge areas on Datacom in the en route. SWIM, we continue to proliferate, you know, pushing information out instead of one-off connections.
Right, so we've been talking about SWIM for so long.
It's pretty mainstream now.
It is mainstream.
It
and
is.
I saw some of the developments out on the floor when I went by the SWIM. It started out as just a big pipe with a lot of information, and now it's being put on dashboards and being able to sort the data and make it useful instead of just having a bunch of data, which is always the problem with data, right?
Exactly. And if you think about years ago, the number of one-off connections we have, right? And that's not good, especially from a cyber standpoint. That's not a place you want to be, right? You always do. And but it really, you know, pushing information out so that folks can subscribe and then have access to that data, it really makes it much easier for the agency. And so much of what we're pushing out now is really around surface capabilities and sharing situational awareness between operators and the FAA.
You mentioned towers a second ago. Every time I hear towers now, I start thinking digital remote towers. And we've got, you know, some demonstrations on the floor about that. Where are we at with that? What are you thinking on that?
Yeah, well, what are we thinking on that? You know, it's, so we've got two projects, largely that are probably one farther along than the other. One, of course, is out in Leesburg, and the other is down in Fort Collins, Colorado. The Fort Collins, Colorado remote tower activity is going to look a little bit different. We're actually going to pipe radar into that. So they're going to have a more, the fidelity of the feed is going to be more robust than what we have in Leesburg. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all on remote towers. I think that's what can make it so challenging. But I know that the agency, the direction the agency is going in, Pam Whitley's organization in A&G is managing the remote tower research on that. Is the push that we have right now is about publishing the performance standards around remote digital towers, remote technology. Because when those are done, companies can build solutions. The FAA will certify the system and just, check it out. But, the technology is going to continue to evolve in that domain, and there will not be a one-size-fits-all. I don't think the agency ever intended to have a remote tower program where we're buying them and deploying them to the field. Not at all. In fact, the hope was that airports, rather than go to brick and mortar solutions, would go and want to invest in remote tower capabilities. And so we'll have to see how all that plays out. I don't think that we've seen that the capabilities have really matured to the extent we'd like to see them mature at.
At any level? I mean, any level tower?
Well, I don't, as far as overseas,
right,
which is where they are, because we've only got the 2 locations here, it depends where you want to deploy it to in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So I think down the road, there's probably some opportunity for, not very small locations, but maybe some more mid-sizers. And I think we just have to see how all the testing plays out and how it all comes together. But certainly, the technology won't be the limiter.
No.
And I think it's the ability to really evaluate these systems and not, I think it can be challenging sometimes for people to not want it to look like the system they use today.
Well, when we went to digital radar, and we still wanted the sweep, even though you didn't need a sweep. Change.
I wasn't around.
Yeah, well, I was. Change is difficult.
Okay.
And when you mention size of, traffic count by size of airport, there's so many that's so subjective. When I asked them out there about an overseas airport, they said, well, medium-sized traffic-wise, 17,000 ops a year. That's Monterey.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
So it's all subjective.
Yeah, but it is, it's very exciting because there are great capabilities out there.
Oh, here's something we were just talking about a minute ago. So let's go to the audience for a moment. How's the training and controller development going at heavy traffic areas like New York TRACON?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I would say New York TRACON is probably one of our heaviest, I would say it's probably the most complex facility we have in terms of the way the traffic is run because of the 3 airports that all align together, right? So goes one, goes the other airports. So we've got a large number of trainees at the TRACON. We've got over 100 trainees that we've put into the TRACON. A couple of years ago, we knew that it wasn't just putting people in the facility to train. We had to revamp the whole process. So we work collaboratively with NACA, with HR, with lots of different organizations. And we also knew that, in many cases, the folks that want to stay in New York are the people who have family roots in New York. So we found a way, working at NACA was very instrumental in that, but getting the ability to local hire. So we've got folks that are from that area, we've got folks from out of the area that are actually going through the training process. So we modified the way we hire to get into that particular facility. We also modified the training at the academy. So we knew that the folks that are training at N90, they need more robust training than maybe some folks get in other facilities. So we actually added 3 radar classes specific to the TRACON in Oklahoma City. So if you're going to N90, you've got to go through these other courses. And the courses are totally tailored to New York TRACON. So those folks arrived probably 9 months, a year ago. They're working their way through the system. We're watching the data very closely. We're monitoring how much time people have on position to train. And so we'll see where we go on that.
Do you feel you're seeing progress after a year?
Some progress. We got the process issues out of the way, right? We solved all of that. So now we have to see how the people actually do in the building.
Right.
And so we're watching all of that, and at the same time, we're evaluating what are our other options in the event that that doesn't work.
Okay. Let's talk about cyber for a minute.
Sure.
So you're awaiting a new CTO, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how's that interaction going to work? How's that? Obviously, it's a new look at cyber. It's elevating the priority of cyber in everything you do every day.
Right.
So how will you interact with that office person?
Yeah. Okay. Well, in the last reauthorization of 2018, there were actually, I believe it was 360 deliverables for the FAA in that reauthorization package. The majority of them were within the first year, which we had a government shutdown, and that made it really challenging. But one of them had to do with standing up a CTO function. And the CTO would be charged with just the overall evaluation and monitoring of the health of the operation, the maintenance, and the cyber security of the systems that we have in the national airspace system. So we're actually working inside the building. We're evaluating what that will look like. We're fairly far along, I would say, and that individual will report to me. It'll be a direct report, and it will have an organization under them to do those things. I envision that they'll work closely with the other 8 vice presidents that I have, and we'll work cohesively as a team. I think it's a tremendous opportunity to have kind of a fresh view that's not necessarily from inside the ATO today on, what the health of those aspects of the operation look like.
So I assume the CTO and their, whatever that organization looks like, will be involved in just about everything you do procurement-wise and
They will, right. And it's pretty exciting. We're kind of whiteboarding what all those functions are going to look like, and there's just so much work to do, right?
Of course.
And but I think one of the important things is making sure you put the right people in the right seats. So this individual will be working closely with the other folks that we've got in the ATO, and my expectation is that everybody's going to work together. Everyone is transparent, but it really, truly is an opportunity to do more and look at things in a way that we probably haven't done in a very, very long time.
which is even going to make it more difficult because the cyber that you have in place, the cyber protections you have in place right now, I don't want to say afterthoughts, but they were bolted on after a system was already in place to try to protect the system, whereas I hope going forward, everything will be baked in the beginning when we think about it. So that makes it very difficult.
Well, we've already taken steps broadly to do that, right? So whether it's the beginning of a procurement, a new acquisition, or a tech refresh on a system, we've got cyber involved in those places today. So we're kind of covering those bases. And then more broadly, it's how do you strengthen that?
Of course.
Because you can't let your guard down.
Right. And you can't protect for everything.
You can't protect for everything.
Yeah.
And when we evaluate, we do our cyber evaluations of our systems. Previously we would evaluate each system standalone. We don't do that anymore. We take a service threat approach. So we look at a system and the other systems that they communicate with, and look for where's the weakest link. If we lose one, what's the impact to the other? So it's a more holistic approach.
And what do we do when we're breached?
Yeah.
How do we recognize it? What do we do?
Right.
Right. I guess I got that question before it even came up. So, do ATCTI students, graduates, actually have a leg up on off the street hiring?
Actually, they go through the same process. What I will say, though, is through legislation, we are required to select percentages of the folks that will go to the academy, X% CTI, X% off the street. You know, we've had a lot of help there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your interaction with the U.S. Immigration Office, Jim Merkel's office. How's that going? How does that work? I mean, we talked a little bit about Lance,
Yeah.
which I think is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually, you know, it's going well. There's so much work going on in the drone space.
Yes.
So, you know, Jay leads an organization, AUS, that organization around, you know, all things drones. Pam Whitley's shop also, and so Jay's got the IPPs, right?
Right.
And Pam's team has the UPPs, which are out of the tech center, a lot of research in there as well. And then ATO, the work we're doing through Lance, and really working with Jay's team, especially because it was never envisioned to be a one-stop shop. You know, Jay and his folks, many of them work from the ATO. We've detailed folks over to support him. But ops has to work closely. You can't get very far without talking about how you impact or integrate into the national airspace system. So we work very close together.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when we talk about Lance, wasn't Lance a collaboration between industry and government?
It was. I mean,
Yeah.
Lance really was about public-private